15 facts which prove that a massive economic meltdown is already happening right now. Michael Snyder reports economic conditions just keep getting worse. As we prepare to enter 2023, we find ourselves in a high inflation environment at the same time that economic activity is really slowing down. And just like we witnessed in 2008, employers are conducting mass layoffs as a horrifying housing crash sweeps across the nation. Those that have been waiting for the U.S. economy to implode can stop waiting because an economic implosion has officially arrived. The following are 15 facts that prove that a massive economic meltdown is already happening right now. 1. Existing home sales have now fallen for 10 consecutive months. 2. Existing home sales are down 35.4% over the last 12 months. That is the largest year-over-year decline in existing home sales since the collapse of the Lehman Brothers. 3. Home builder sentiment has now dropped for 12 consecutive months. 4. Home construction costs have risen more than 30% since the beginning of 2022. 5. The number of single-family housing unit permits has fallen for 9 months in a row. 6. The Empire State Manufacturing Index has plunged, quote, to a reading of negative 11.2 in December, and quote, that figure was way, way below expectations. 7. In November, we witnessed the largest decline in retail sales that we have ever seen, all year long. 8. Even the biggest names on Wall Street are starting to let workers go. In fact, it's being reported that Goldman Sachs will soon lay off approximately 4,000 employees. 9. The Federal Reserve is admitting that the number of actual jobs in the United States has been overstated by over 1 million. 10. U.S. job cuts were 417% higher in November than they were during the same month a year ago. 11. A recent Wall Street Journal survey found that approximately 2/3 of all Americans expect the economy to get even worse next year. Number 12. A newly released Bloomberg survey has discovered that 70% of U.S. economists believe that a recession is coming in 2023. 13. Inflation continues to spiral wildly out of control. At this point, a head of lettuce now costs $11 at one grocery store in California. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. 14. Overall, vegetable prices in the U.S. are more than 80% higher than they were at this time last year. 15. Thanks to the rapidly rising cost of living, 63% of the U.S. population is now living paycheck to paycheck. In a desperate attempt to get inflation under control, the Federal Reserve has been dramatically increasing interest rates. Those interest rate hikes are what is causing the housing market to crash, but Fed officials insist that such short-term pain is necessary in order to tame inflation. But meanwhile, our politicians in Washington are busy creating more inflation by borrowing and spending money at a rate that is absolutely unprecedented in our entire history. This week, an abominable $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill is being rammed through Congress, but not a single member of Congress has read it. That's ridiculous. The bill is 4,155 pages long, and U.S. Senator Rand Paul just held a press briefing during which he wheeled it out on a trolley. After the grossly bloated $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill advanced in the Senate by a vote of 70 to 25, GOP Senator Rand Paul held a press briefing during which he wheeled in the abomination on a trolley and demanded to know how anyone would be able to read it before the end of the weekend. Paul, along with the only other dissenting Senate Republicans Mike Brown, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, and Rick Scott, highlighted how ludicrous the fast track of the bill has been. Unfortunately, this absurd spending bill has broad support on both sides of the aisle, and that just shows how broken Washington has become. Our system of government has failed time after time, and our politicians continue to spend money on some of the most ridiculous things imaginable. The following example that were pulled out of the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill were discovered by the Heritage Foundation. $1.2 million for LGBTQIA and Pride centers, $1.2 million for service for DACA recipients, ACA helping illegal aliens with taxpayer funds at San Diego Community College, $477,000 for the Equity Institute in Rhode Island to indoctrinate teachers with anti-racism virtual labs, $1 million for Zora's House in Ohio, a co-working community space for women and gender-expansive people of color, $3 million for the American LGBTQ Museum in New York City, $3.6 million for the Michelle Obama Trail in Georgia, $750,000 for the LGBT and gender non-conforming housing in Albany, New York, $856,000 for LGBT Center in New York. And have you noticed that our politicians often prefer to push these types of bills through just before major holidays when hardly anyone is paying attention? No matter who we send to Washington, the story remains the same. As long as our politicians are borrowing and spending trillions of dollars that we do not have, Fed officials won't be able to win their war against inflation. The Fed can send interest rates into the stratosphere, but inflation will continue to remain high because our politicians insist on showering the nation with giant mountains of cash. We should all be deeply offended by what's happening, but most Americans simply do not know enough to care. But once economic conditions get even worse than they were in 2008 and 2009, the majority of the U.S. population will become extremely angry. Of course, things could have turned out much differently if we had made better decisions during the years leading up to this crisis. Unfortunately, we've run out of time to change course, and that means that a tremendous amount of pain is ahead of us for all of us. This is by Michael Schneider. It is finally here. Michael's new book entitled End Times is now available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. About the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book titled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7 Years Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing. And one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the Most Important News. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely great help. These are such troubled times, and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. If you've not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is by Michael Schneider, Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.